Welcome to the first episode of Accelerate. I'm the president of Stellar, Tony, and today we're going to be diving into finance. So next thing we have our interviewee, and by the end of the video, we'll have one advice for students. So make sure to watch to the end. So the first question is, what type of career or industry are you working in right now?
I work for a bank, precisely as a custodian bank. However, I work in the sales and trading functionality for this particular bank.
So how would you describe the work environment and the culture in this field?
In general, I think it's very fast-paced to start with. Requires a lot of fast calculation, quick communication with our clients, but in the meantime, analyzing the market. So I would say in general, it's a fast reaction market and job itself.
Would you say it's a very high-stress environment you work in?
It is stressful to a certain extent, but once you get yourself into that, especially if it is something that you love to do, you naturally just cope with that.
What is a typical day for someone who works in this type of industry?
I started my career as a foreign exchange trader, so I'll give you a description about that, right? So typically you start of your day probably around 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. It's quite early. That's because foreign exchange market is around the clock. You need to take over the books, take it over from the US, and then start off the day. And typically we start off the day by reviewing what's happening in the market, because you can be at sleep, but the market doesn't really stop, right? So you need to understand what has happened overnight. And once you're settled with that, you sort of sit down analyzing the market and decide what kind of position that you intend to take on, meaning that is dollar yen going up today, or is dollar China going flat, or where does euro dollar go, right? So that's your analysis. And then you start trading. Take client orders, trade your inventories, etc., etc. You need to have a plan as well. You need to understand what's coming along in terms of data release for the day, and you need to react into the market actions as well. And before you realize, it's already 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and this is where you pass the books to your London counterparts.
So, what kind of education, skills, or expertise should someone have to try to break into this type of industry, be it custodian banks, commercial banks, or investment banking?
I think first thing first is you got to have a bit of a technical skills, because analyzing the market, especially these days, you leverage a lot of quantitative approach to do that, as opposed to 20 years ago where I started. A lot of those that we call a voice trader, you still talk to your brokers, but these days majority of the stuff turned into electronic trading. Right? So you got to understand your system, understand coding. So all these are very, very technical to start with. I think coming with a technical background will give you benefits. Second thing is math. Work out the formulas, this and that. Most of the time it's common sense, quick math, your mental math. You've got to be quick dealing with the numbers, up, down, how much your money are making, losing, in terms of market percentage movement, what does that translate back into your position? You're going to have a fast mind to handle that. So I think that's the second bit. The third bit is this probably not only applying for bank, probably in general across all the businesses, your articulation skills. How do you articulate an idea using the least words and the most transparent way to deliver your idea? I think that's the key.
That's a very good point, I think. Communication is very important when it comes to working and collaborating with people.
Yeah.
So in this type of industries, like working in the bank and finance, is it more about independent work or collaboration with other people?
I would say if you function as a trader, most of the time teamwork matters, but it's count on a lot of individuality. A majority of those can be individual analysis, individual judgment. However, if you come down to other functionalities within the bank, for instance, as a salesperson or as a research strategist, I would say teamwork matters. When I say teamwork, you need to learn how to work together with other people. It's not only about individuality where you are the stellar star. Sometimes the compromising is a good feature or a good trait as well. And then think from the team perspective, how to maximize the team results rather than your individual results. That's a key mentality.
So in terms of university majors, because I know many students who want to go into finance or business want to pursue a major in business administrations. So would you recommend choosing a concentration or major in tech or math will be more beneficial than business administrations?
It's actually very hard to say, meaning that you can choose either one. But I would say if you major in business administration, you need to build up a bit of the technical skills. On the other hand, if you're majoring in math, nothing wrong with that, but you need to learn a bit of the business, the finance 101 as well. So either way you end up in one area, you need to build up the cross-function expertise through other areas.
So it's like a bit of both.
I would agree. And also, just to give an example, I don't want to discourage people, but my personal background, I did my undergraduate degree in hotel management, so hospitalities, which has nothing whatsoever to do with finance. But in the end, I did some learnings on the side. Also, I pursued a master degree that enables me to get into the industry. For everybody's information, sometimes early in your development, you probably don't really have a firm target, but don't be scared away. It's okay to change. Once you set your mind into something, you'll be successful.
I think that's a very important mindset, actually. And moving on to our following up question. So, still in terms of education, from people choosing universities or degrees, would you say the prestige or name of the university matters more, or the course, like for example, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, or like universities that specialize more in finance and econ?
I don't want to lie saying, degree or school reputation doesn't matter, because they do. But in reality, those are just the door openers, right? So sometimes if you have a decent degree or a decent university, it gets you in the first round of the interview. But starting from that point, probably the degree itself doesn't really matter that much, right? So it's a door opener. Flipping the coin, if you come from a less decent school, it doesn't really mean that you won't be successful in the industry either, right? But looking at my peers, or even the stars in the industry, I think a lot of those are not with decent school degrees either, right? And I don't see anything that stops them from being successful.
So I think the key message here is don't be discouraged by the school, but at the same time, if you get into like a very good school or a decent school, it doesn't mean that it's a golden ticket to everything.
That's right.
I know many students. For example, around my school, my peers, they always talk about investment banking, and I believe that many students don't really understand what are the differences between the different types of banks, be it investment banking, commercial, or custodians. So could you elaborate on some of the differences?
Of course. Start with the commercial banks or retail banks. This is the day-to-day bank everybody goes to, right? Where you make the deposit, you borrow money from, get the bit of mortgage to buy a house, buy a car. Those are the commercial bank we're talking about, mainly responsible for taking deposit and then lending it out. And of course, how they make money is the difference between the two, lending rate and borrowing rate. So typically that's a retail bank functionality, right? The second part, you talk about investment banking. Investment banking by nature is supposed to take people onto the public market, meaning that if you are a small company, you work your way up and really successful building up the good financials, and you want to go public. Public means that you go for other fundings from the shareholders. Everybody can purchase your stock. But before you do that, you want to qualify yourself into that game. You also need to hire some experts to help you. So in a way, you can feel investment bankers in a way is a consultant job, helping those entrepreneurs getting themselves to the public company. So that's the investment banking job. It can be lucrative in a certain way, but it can also be very, very stressful in terms of the hours and also the pressure. The part that you mentioned is a custodian bank. I'm personally from a custodian bank. It's actually, we call it bank of the banks, right? So it's actually a bank for the institutions, or we call it institutional investors. So when those large pension fund or central bank or investment managers, they want to deposit their money, or they want to safekeep their stocks or fixed income, bond, where do they go? As a common Joe, we can go to our commercial bank, but they can't really go to a commercial bank, right? So they go to a custodian bank, and this custodian bank's responsibility to safekeep their assets. But of course, there are certain things deriving from that. You can offer liquidities on top of those assets. You can be rates trading, fixed income trading, foreign exchange trading, equity trading. You can also offer lending. You have ample securities where you can lend out to other users. And in the meantime, you can offer fund accounting, meaning accounting, record keeping, and also the traditional custody services. Also, all those are part of a custodian bank remit as well.
So I guess in a way we can summarize it as investment bankings are consultants for entrepreneurs who want to go public by IPO, and custodian banks are banks that other commercial banks go to when they need to lend money, deposit assets, etc. Right?
I'll correct you on one thing. I think you were 90% correct. I would say custodian bank is more a bank for institutional investors, as in individuals.
Individuals.
As opposed to individuals.
Okay.
Yeah.
What made you want to pursue this career? And can you share any experiences that solidified your interest in finance and banking?
Sure. As I shared previously in one of your questions, my undergraduate is actually hospitality management or hotel management. I went for that because at that age I do have a bit of a desire and to see fancy hotels, and then you feel like that's a nice job. But after 4 years of studying that, I probably changed my mind. And once again, looking back, there's nothing wrong with that, because a lot of the undergraduate education provides the fundamental education, right? So the occupational part, which is the majoring part, is only a small portion of the general education. And after that, I quickly realized that my strength is on math, is on technical skills. So I quickly shifted the swimming lane. I went into a master degree study for quantitative finance, or other people may call it financial engineering. And after that, I feel this is where my area and my strengths got fully played out. And with that technical skills, I got into a buy side. Buy side means a investment management firm, right? And where opportunities leads to another one. This is where I'm working for as a custodian bank, and then I shifted from we call it buy side to the sell side as a banker, and fast forwarding that to where it is today, 20 years later, this is where I am.
Yeah, so I guess don't be afraid to explore and change lanes.
That's right.
And when you're in the end of our session, can you share some the common misconception that people have about finance and banking in general?
Sure. I think there are a couple of things. When we talk about finance, I think a lot of people think of finance as in lucrative jobs and stressful. A lot of those are correct, but I have to stress out the fact that even within the banking industry, there are different type of jobs. As I said, you can be a trader, you can be a salesperson, but you can also be a finance person. You can be a corporate function. Corporate function meaning that you can be an HR person in the bank, right? You can be a compliance person. You can be a strategist. You can be, we call it AML, anti-money laundering person as well. So my point being, there are different job profiles. So don't just fixate it on the view that it's definitely stressful, is definitely fast-paced, because a lot of other jobs or functionalities that requires, instead of fast-paced, is actually more logical and sequential processing of the job itself, right? So there are plenty of those within the banking industry. So don't be fooled by that. There are definitely multi-functionalities and roles within the financial industry.
I think that's a very good answer, and I'm sure it answers many of the students' questions or concerns. No, I'm sure that answers many of students' concerns and misconceptions about banking. And one last question: do you have any advice, in general, what advice that you would give to current high school and undergraduate students that are looking into finance and banking as a career?
Absolutely. First thing first, I think always follow your own heart, your interest, right? And nobody knows you better than yourself.
Yeah.
You think your parents or your buddies know better, but I think you're wrong. Sometimes you just have to go by your own heart, your own intuition on that. And secondly, go by your own interest. The successful ones I've already seen in the industry, or even beyond the banking industry, are the ones who love what they do. And in the meantime, I do see in the day-to-day job, I see a lot of people just trying to make money doing something that they don't like, right? So I think finding a job that you like, you enjoy, despite the fact that sometimes it's long hours, it's stressful, you would go a long way. Otherwise, the moment you hit some wall, the moment you hit some frustration, you start thinking about quitting.
Yeah, you want to give up, right?
That's right. And last thing is just, as I said, don't be scared about mistakes, because at early stage of your life, whatever you choose, certain people are lucky. They pick up something. For instance, they choose an industry, they just stick to it, and turn out to be that's what they love to do, where their passions are. That's okay. But you see plenty of others, they shift the swim lanes halfway through. Sometimes it's through the educational process. As my example, I started undergraduate in something that I quickly shift the swim lane and jump into something else that I do have interest in. Or some people realize that halfway through their career path. I think there's always pros and cons where you shift, but always follow your heart. And don't be afraid of making that changes.
That's very good advice. So always follow your passion, what you actually like, and don't be afraid to make mistakes and keep exploring what you like.
Correct.
Thank you for tuning into today's Accelerate program, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.